You wake before dawn. The bed is straw, layered with wool. The air in your small room is sharp and clean, smelling faintly of charcoal from last night's brazier. Outside your shuttered window, you can hear the city beginning to stir. A cart on cobblestones, a rooster somewhere down the hill, the deep iron clang of a church bell from the direction of Hagia Sophia. It is October, in the year of our Lord, 1347. You live in Constantinople, the queen of cities, the eye of the world. 500,000 souls sleep beneath these walls tonight. Greeks and Latins, Armenians and Jews, slaves from the north and Turks from across the strait. You live in the largest, richest, most magnificent Christian city on earth. You rise, you wash your face from a clay basin, you dress. You do not know, you cannot know that 3 Genoese galleys are at this moment rounding the headland to the north, sailing down out of the Black Sea, riding the autumn current toward your harbour. You do not know that in the bilges of those ships, among the grain sacks and the bales of silk, there are rats, and on those rats there are fleas, and in those fleas there is something for which your language has no name yet. You do not know that within 4 months half the people you greet in the street today will be dead. You do not know that you are about to become one of the first human beings in Europe to witness the deadliest catastrophe in recorded history. You are the first to know. You will not know what you know. Step out of your door. The street is narrow and steep. Most streets in Constantinople are. The city was built on 7 hills, the way Rome was, and it climbs and descends in a way that takes the breath of foreigners. To your left, downhill, the sun is rising over the strait. The water is the colour of beaten bronze. You can see the dark shape of Asia on the other side, Chalcedon, 2 miles across the water, where the Council of 451 was held, where the very nature of Christ was once decided by bishops drinking warm wine in summer. You are standing in Europe, but Europe ends a few hundred yards behind you, where the city wall meets the sea. Constantinople is the hinge of the world. You walk downhill toward the Mace, the great central avenue, the spine of the city. It runs from the eastern point where the imperial palace stands, all the way west to the land walls, the triple walls that Theodosius built 9 centuries before, the walls that have never been breached. The Messe is paved with marble. The marble is worn smooth in the centres of the slabs, polished by 1,000 years of feet. You walk on stones that emperors have walked on. Justinian walked here. Heraclius walked here. The boy emperors and the warrior emperors and the saints and the murderers, all of them walked these stones. You pass the Forum of Constantine. In the centre stands the great porphyry column, a single shaft of dark red Egyptian stone brought from the desert by the first Christian emperor 1,000 years ago. At its top, once stood a statue of Constantine himself, his head crowned with the rays of the sun. The statue fell in a storm long before you were born. Now there is only a cross. You walk on. The smells of the morning rise around you. Baking bread from a side street. Fish, always fish in this city. You live by the sea on 3 sides. Donkey and horse. The sharp smell of tanners' shops where they cure leather in urine, the drift of incense from an open church door where the morning liturgy is already beginning, the priest's voice rising and falling in the old chant that has not changed in 700 years. You reach the Augusteion, the great square, and there before you stands Hagia Sophia. You have seen it 10,000 times in your life. You still stop. The dome is the largest in the world. It has been the largest in the world for 800 years. When Justinian built it in the 6th century, he is said to have stood beneath it on the day of its consecration and whispered, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." The dome seems to hang from heaven on a chain of golden light. Inside, the walls are sheathed in marble and gold mosaic. Christ, Pantocrator, looks down from the apse with eyes that do not blink. You cross yourself and walk on, down toward the harbours. You should understand something about the city you live in. Constantinople in 1347 is not what it was. The empire, the Roman Empire, for that is still. What your people call themselves, Romanoi, Romans, has been shrinking for a century. The Latin Crusaders sacked the city in 1204. They held it for 57 years. When the Greeks took it back, much of what had been lost was lost forever. The relics, the gold, the libraries, gone west, into the cathedrals of France and Italy. And just this year, a civil war has ended. For 6 years, 2 emperors fought each other across the dying provinces. John V, Palaiologos, the boy emperor, against John VI, Cantacuzénos, the regent who declared himself emperor in his own right. The fighting brought Turkish mercenaries into Thrace. It bankrupted the treasury. It killed perhaps 50,000 people. It ended only this past February when Cantacuzénos rode into Constantinople and was crowned in a ceremony so impoverished that the crown jewels were paste. The real ones had been pawned to Venice years before. This is your emperor, John VI, Cantacuzénos. He has reigned for 8 months. He is a learned man, a philosopher, a writer of history. He has a wife, Irene. He has a daughter, Helena, recently married to the boy emperor as a peace settlement. He has sons. The youngest is named Andronicos. He is 13 years old. Remember that name, Andronicos. 13 years old. You will hear it again. You reach the harbour. The Golden Horn opens before you, that long curving inlet that gives Constantinople the finest natural port on earth. Ships from every nation lie at anchor. Venetian round ships with their red lion banners, Genoese galleys, low and lean, Greek fishing boats, a Mamluk merchantman from Alexandria. Beyond the water, on the far shore, is Galata, the Genoese quarter, the colony of foreigners that controls more than half of all the trade that enters this city. The Greeks resent them. The Greeks need them. You are alive in a great city in its twilight. But what you don't know yet, what no one in Constantinople knows yet, is that everything is about to change. You hear about the ships before you see them. By mid-morning, the rumour is moving through the markets. 3 Genoese galleys come down from the Black Sea, putting in at the Galata docks. They have come from Caffa. Caffa, you know the name. It is the great Genoese trading colony in the Crimea, far to the north, where the silk roads of Asia meet the salt water of the world. Caffa is where the spice and slaves and silk of the East come to be loaded onto ships and carried west into Europe. But the news is strange. The ships have come without warning, out of season. They are riding low in the water, and the men who have come ashore, the few of them who have come ashore, are sick. You walk down toward the harbour to see. You will not be the only one. By the afternoon, half the city has heard. Crowds gather along the seawall looking across at Galata. Standing beside you, perhaps, is a Greek priest, an Armenian goldsmith, an Italian wine merchant. You all see the same thing. The galleys are moored at the long stone quays. There are no longshoremen unloading cargo. There is no shouting, no cursing, no commerce. There is only smoke from a single fire on the deck of one of the ships, and the distant sound of a man weeping. What you do not know is that those ships have come from a place where the dead were used as weapons. 3 years earlier, in 1346, a Mongol army had laid siege to Caffa. The Mongols themselves were dying. Something had moved across the steppes from the east, killing armies, killing whole cities. Modern scholars, working from DNA recovered from medieval graves in what is today Kyrgyzstan, have traced the origins of what would come to be called the Black Death to the Tian Shan Mountains in the late 1330s. The bacterium Yersinia pestis, dormant in marmot colonies, broke its species barrier and entered the human population. From there it rode the trade routes west, faster than rumour, slower than wind. By 1346, it was in the Mongol camp outside the walls of Caffa. The Italian chronicler Gabriele de Mussi, writing in 1348 from his home in Piacenza, recorded what happened next. The Mongols, dying in their tents, loaded the corpses of their own dead onto catapults and hurled them over the walls of Caffa. They wanted the Genoese inside to share their plague. Whether the catapulting actually transmitted the disease, modern historians doubt. The bacterium does not survive long in dead flesh. Likely, the rats and the fleas crossed the lines as rats and fleas always do, indifferent to walls. But the symbolism is exact. The first European victims of the plague would be the Italians of Caffa. And when those Italians fled west in late 1346 and early 1347, they carried the plague with them. The ships you are looking at now across the water of the Golden Horn are some of those ships. For 10 days, the galleys sit at anchor. The Genoese authorities in Galata do what they can. They try to quarantine the sailors. They try to isolate the ships. The sailors come ashore anyway. They always do in port. After a long voyage, they go to taverns, they visit women, they embrace family, they sleep in shared beds in cheap inns. On the 11th day, the first person dies, then a second, then a third, then 6, then 20. You hear about it in the markets, a labourer found dead in his bed in Galata, a serving girl dead by sunset on the day she fell ill, then a priest, then a customs official, then a whole family. Mother and 3 children, dead in a single house, no one knowing for how long until the smell brought the neighbours. The deaths spread out from the harbour in a slow, widening circle. They cross the water from Galata to Constantinople itself. Within 3 weeks, they are in every neighbourhood. The Emperor John VI, Cantacuzénos, your emperor, would write of it later in the histories he composed after his abdication. He wrote with the unsentimental clarity of a man who had survived what he was describing. Upon arrival in Byzantium, he wrote, "The disease attacked almost all the maritime coasts of the world and killed most of their people, for it swept not only through Pontus, Thrace, and Macedonia, but even Greece, Italy, and all the islands, Egypt, Libya, Judea, Syria, and spread throughout almost the entire world." He wrote those words as a man who had buried his own son. You do not know the emperor's grief yet. You only know what you see. You see your neighbor knock on his neighbor's door and get no answer. You see a cart go past with 3 bodies in it, then another cart with 5. You see the priest of your parish church grow thin and grey, riding from house to house with the host and the holy oil, performing extreme unction 4, 5, 6 times a day. You see him stop coming, and you begin, for the first time in your life, to be afraid in a way you have never been afraid before. It is now late autumn. The plague has been in Constantinople for perhaps a month. The deaths in your own neighbourhood are no longer a rumour, they are a daily count. You wake each morning to the sound of doors being knocked on, and to the silence that often follows. You eat your bread quickly, you go out as little as possible, and then the news comes from the palace. The emperor's son is sick. The boy is named Andronicos. He is the youngest son of John VI, Cantacuzénos, and Empress Irene. He is 13 years old. He has been raised in the Blachernai Palace, on the heights at the northwest of the city, where the imperial family has lived since the great Crusader sack 140 years ago drove them out of the old palace by the sea. Andronicos has the upbringing of a Byzantine prince. He has been taught Greek and Latin. He has been taught the lives of the saints. He has been taught by his father, who is one of the most learned men of his century, the philosophy of Aristotle and the theology of Gregory Palamas. He rides, he hunts, he attends the liturgy at Hagia Sophia on feast days, walking in procession behind his father, dressed in the purple silk and gold thread vestments that mark him as one born to the porphyry, born in the purple chamber of the palace, born to rule. He is, in every sense, the future, and he is now lying in a private chamber of the Blachanae Palace, with a black swelling the size of an egg in the hollow of his groin, and a fever so high that his attendants can feel the heat of him from across the room. You imagine, you do not have to imagine, the emperor would later write of it himself, the scene in that chamber, the boy in the bed, the physicians, the best in the empire, men who have read Galen and Hippocrates, and the Arab masters Avicenna and Rhazes, standing helpless. They bleed him. They apply poultices of fig and onion to the swellings. They burn herbs to clear the bad air, the miasma that they believe carries the disease. None of it does anything. None of it could. The germ theory of disease will not be discovered for 500 years. The emperor stands in the doorway. He is a man in his 50s. He has commanded armies. He has plotted coups. He has been crowned in 2 cities and married off his daughter to his rival to end a war. He is, by the standards of his world, one of the most powerful men alive, the wearer of the purple, the inheritor of Augustus, the equal of the apostles. There is almost nothing in this world he cannot command, and he cannot embrace his dying son. The physicians have told him, to touch the boy is to take the boy's death into himself. The contagion is too dangerous. If the emperor falls, the empire falls. He must keep his distance. He must stand in the doorway. He stands in the doorway. And the emperor, the most powerful man in the Christian world, could do nothing. In the histories written years later, when he was an old man and a monk on Mount Athos, John VI Cantacuzénos would record the death of his son in a single, devastating sentence. He had written long passages about politics, about war, about theology. Of his youngest child, he wrote only this. My son Andronicos, he wrote, the youngest of my sons was struck by the plague and died on the 3rd day, 3 days. That is all the time the disease needs. In its bubonic form, the swelling appears in the lymph nodes, the groin, the armpit, the neck. Within a day of infection, the fever follows. By the 2nd day, the patient is delirious. By the 3rd, in most cases, the patient is dead. In its more terrible form, the pneumonic plague, which attacks the lungs and is spread by breath, the patient drowns in his own blood within 48 hours. Andronicos took 3 days. You hear of his death from the criers in the street, or from the bells of Hagia Sophia, tolling slowly, the way they toll only for the death of someone of the imperial house. You hear it, and you understand something terrible. If the emperor cannot save his own son, if the master of Constantinople, the heir of Constantine, the man with all the wealth and learning of an empire at his disposal, cannot save the life of a 13-year-old boy, then no one can save anyone. There is no funeral procession. There cannot be. The streets are too dangerous, the crowds too sick. The boy is buried quickly, quietly. The emperor does not weep where men can see him. He locks himself in his rooms with his books. Years later, after he had abdicated the throne and taken monastic vows under the name Joseph, John VI Cantacuzénos would write something else about that time. He wrote about the strangeness of being a man of power in the face of a thing power could not touch. He wrote that the plague had taught him what the philosophers had only described, that the difference between an emperor and a beggar, in the eyes of God and of mortality, was nothing at all. He had learned this from his son. You learn it from him. You walk home through streets in which there are now no children playing. There have not been children playing for some weeks you did not notice until now. It is winter now, then it is spring, then it is summer. The summer of 1348. You have stopped counting time the way you used to count time. You count it now in the way people in catastrophes always count it, by what has been lost. The death rate, by the spring of 1348, has reached what the chroniclers describe as 1,000 persons each day. 1,000. In a city of 500,000, this is the rate at which a whole neighborhood dies in a week. The numbers are recorded by the contemporary historian Nikephoros Grigoras, a learned man of the imperial court who knew the emperor personally and who would himself survive the plague to write its history. His estimates are confirmed in their general scale by the modern definitive study of the Black Death, the complete history of the Black Death, published in 2021 by Professor Ole Benedictou of the University of Oslo. Benedictou's exhaustive demographic work, drawing on a generation of archaeological evidence, including the East Smithfield plague pits in London, studied in detail by Sharon DeWitt of the University of South Carolina, supports the conclusion that Constantinople, like most of the cities the plague entered in 1347 and 1348, lost between 40 and 60% of its population in the first wave. Half of everyone you have ever known walk through the city in the summer of 1348. The first thing you notice is the smell. There are not enough graves. There were never going to be enough graves. The cemeteries inside the walls filled within weeks. The clergy ordered mass pits dug outside the land walls in the open ground beyond the Theodosian fortifications, and for a while these were enough. Then they were not enough. Bodies began to be left in the streets, in the alleys, on the doorsteps of empty houses. The bodies were collected, when they could be collected, by men paid extraordinary wages, gold coins, where before they had been paid in copper, and sometimes the men collecting did not return. An Arab traveller passing through the region in this period would describe Constantinople as a city of corpses. The phrase is not metaphor, it is observation. You walk down the Mese. The marble paving stones are still there, but there are no merchants in the stalls. The bakeries are closed, most of the bakers are dead, and the wheat ships from the Black Sea have stopped arriving. The taverns are dark. The whorehouses have been shuttered by imperial decree, though no one believes the decree has changed anything. The whorehouses simply emptied of customers and then of women. You pass churches. The doors of some stand open. Inside, you see priests still saying the liturgy, but to empty naves or to congregations of 3 or 4, all of them coughing. You pass churches where the doors are closed and locked and where no chant comes from within. The priest is dead. The deacon is dead. The boy who lit the candles is dead. The breakdown of the religious rites is among the worst of it. In a city where every death has been accompanied for 1,000 years by confession and last rites and the holy oil, where the sacrament of the dying is one of the deepest comforts a Christian can possess, the dying are now dying alone. They are dying without absolution. They are, according to the theology of the age, dying in fear of their souls. The processions begin in late spring, long lines of the faithful walking barefoot through the streets behind the relics of the saints, chanting Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, begging God to lift the affliction. You join one of these processions, perhaps, many do. Within a week you notice that some of the faces from the procession are no longer in the procession. Some respond differently. Some leave. The exodus begins in waves. Anyone with the means flees. They go to country estates, to monasteries on Mount Athos, to villages in the hinterland that have not yet been touched. Most of them carry the plague with them. The roads outside Constantinople fill with bodies, the chroniclers say, travellers who set out healthy and died within a week of their flight. The plague follows the refugees as it followed the ships. Some respond by drinking, some respond by praying without ceasing, some respond by stealing. There are bands of looters now in the abandoned districts, breaking into the houses of the dead, taking what can be carried. Some respond by killing themselves rather than wait. The chroniclers record this also, with horror and a strange compassion. The terrible scapegoating that will come. The massacres of Jewish communities across Germany and France in 1349 does not happen in Constantinople in 1347 or 1348. The Byzantine response to the plague is different, more inward, more theological. The Greeks blame their sins. They blame the emperor. They blame the heretics among them. The pogroms of the Rhineland are a later horror of a different culture and a different politics. By the end of summer, you are one of perhaps 250,000 people still alive in a city that had held 500,000 in October. The streets are quiet in a way they have never been quiet. You hear birds, you hear the wind, you hear the sea more clearly than you ever heard it before, because there is no other sound competing. By the end of summer, Constantinople was no longer a city, it was a graveyard. You should know something about the ships. The Genoese galleys that came down from Caffa in October 1347 did not stay in Constantinople. They did not even stay long. By late autumn, while the plague was beginning its work in the Galata quarter, some of the same ships and other ships that had taken on cargo and crew while in port slipped their moorings and sailed west. They were merchants. They had goods to deliver. They had contracts in Sicily and in Provence and in Genoa. They followed the sea routes their fathers and grandfathers had followed. They went down through the Sea of Marmara, through the Dardanelles, into the Aegean, across the open Mediterranean. They carried in their cargo holds the rats. The rats carried the fleas carried Yersinia pestis. In October of 1347, the same month you woke up in your bed in Constantinople, 12 Genoese galleys put into the harbour of Messina in Sicily. The chronicler Michele da Piazza, who watched them arrive, wrote that the men on board were dying so fast that the Sicilians refused to let the ships unload. They were driven off, but it was already too late. Within a month, Messina was dying. From Messina, the plague moved to Marseille by November 1347, from Marseille to Genoa by December, from Genoa to Pisa and Venice and the ports of the Adriatic. By January 1348 it was in Avignon, the seat of the Pope. By March 1348 it was in Florence. By summer 1348 it was in Paris. By autumn 1348 it was in England. By 1349 it was in Norway. By 1351 it had killed somewhere between 30 and 60% of the entire population of Europe. The historian Monica Green, in her 2020 study The Four Black Deaths, would draw on the genetic evidence from cemeteries from Kyrgyzstan to England to demonstrate that what was once thought of as a single plague was in fact a series of strains, radiating outward along the trade routes of Eurasia like blood through an open vein. The ships did not stop in Constantinople. The ships kept sailing. And here is the thing you understand now, standing in your half-empty city in the summer of 1348. Here is the realization that comes to you when the news from the west begins to drift back, carried by sailors who came up through the Aegean, by traders, by refugees. What happened to you is happening to them. The grief you feel, your neighbours in Florence feel, the fear you live with, your cousins in Marseille live with, the empty churches you walk past, the empty churches of Paris, match them stone for stone. You were the first. You will not be the last. The plague is not your private catastrophe. It is the catastrophe of the world. Somewhere in Florence, at this very moment, a young man is standing on a balcony, watching carts of bodies pass beneath him. He does not yet have a name in your imagination. He will. His name will be Giovanni Boccaccio. His city is dying. He will write about it. But that is another story. That is the next story. The plague does not end, it only recedes. By the end of 1348, the death rate in Constantinople drops. By spring 1349, it is a memory. People begin to live again. They marry. They remarry, often because so many spouses are dead. They have children. The markets reopen. The bakers' sons take over their father's shops. The empty houses are taken by anyone who can pay the rent, and many by those who cannot. But the city does not recover. Estimates suggest that Constantinople lost between 40 and 60% of its population in the years 1347 and 1348. Benedictau's recent work places it closer to the higher figure. A loss on that scale does not heal in a generation. It does not heal in two. Constantinople in 1400 was smaller than Constantinople in 1300. Constantinople in 1450, on the eve of the Ottoman conquest, would have a population perhaps a quarter of what it had been before the plague arrived. The intellectual losses are perhaps the most difficult to measure. The scholars who would have copied the manuscripts, the theologians who would have written the commentaries, the artists who would have painted the icons, the philosophers who would have continued the work of the so-called Paleologan Renaissance. Many of them were among the dead. The seeds of the Italian Renaissance, in some accounts, are nourished by the Greek manuscripts and Greek scholars who fled Constantinople in the years after 1347. The Byzantine intellectual world, weakened first by civil war and then gutted by plague, would never again produce the great works it had produced in the centuries before. The political consequences were equally severe. The emperor, John VI Cantacuzénos, never recovered from the death of his son or from the catastrophe of his reign. He continued to rule badly for another 7 years. The empire shrank around him. Turkish armies, his own former allies from the civil war, settled permanently in Thrace. In 1354, after his other son lost the city of Gallipoli to the Ottomans, the first permanent Turkish foothold on European soil, Cantacuzénos abdicated the throne. He took monastic vows. He retired to the monastery of the Pantocrata in the city and then to Mount Athos. He spent the rest of his long life writing his histories, his theological tracts, his defences of the friend he had once protected, Gregory Palamas. He died around 1383, an old monk in a quiet cell. His memoirs do not say so directly, but there are passages in them, scholars note, that read like a man writing under the weight of a grief he never set down. The death of Andronicos sits in those pages like a stone. The empire he abdicated would last another 99 years. In 1453, the Turks of Mehmed the Conqueror breached the Theodosian walls, the walls that had never been breached, and Constantinople, the queen of cities, the eye of the world, fell. It became Istanbul. Some historians argue that the line from 1347 to 1453 is direct, that the plague did not destroy Byzantium, but that it destroyed Byzantium's capacity to recover from what came next, that the half-empty city the Ottomans took was already a ghost, that the dome of Hagia Sophia, when the muezzin first chanted the call to prayer from its parapets, echoed not because it was newly empty, but because it had been emptying for 100 years, ever since the Genoese galleys came down from Caffa. You, in 1348, in your half-empty city, you do not know any of this. You only know that you have survived. Your sister is dead. Your father is dead. The priest of your parish is dead. 2 of your 3 children are dead. But you are alive. You are watching this video, so you survived. That is the strange covenant of plague. The survivors are simply those who survived. You walked to Hagia Sophia in the autumn of 1348, almost a year after the morning you woke and did not yet know. You go in. The great dome is still there. The mosaics are still there. Christ Pantocrator still looks down with the same unblinking eyes. The candles still burn. But you are not the same person who walked in here a year ago. You will never be that person again. The bacterium that killed Andronicos, the son of the emperor, in November 1347, is still alive. Yersinia pestis exists today. It lives, as it has always lived, in the burrows of marmots and prairie dogs and other rodents, in the highlands of Central Asia, in the steppes of Mongolia, in the deserts of the American Southwest. The World Health Organization records between 1,000 and 2,000 human cases of plague worldwide each year. Most are now treatable with antibiotics. Most are not. The disease did not leave the world. The world adapted to the disease. The trade routes that carried Yersinia pestis from Caffa to Constantinople to Messina to Marseille, those routes still exist. They have been paved and electrified and turned into shipping lanes and air corridors. The pattern of contagion you lived through in 1347 is the same pattern that carried influenza in 1918 and SARS in 2003 and the coronavirus in 2020. The world has not become safer. It has only become faster. The emperor's grief, standing in the doorway of his dying son's room. That grief has not changed either. It is the grief of every parent in every pandemic, of every hospital corridor in 2020 where a family could not enter the ICU, of every funeral conducted by video link. We have better medicine. We do not have better hearts. We grieve the way Cantacuzanos grieved. We will always grieve that way. And one more thing. Constantinople, in 1347, did not know how to contain the plague. There was no concept of quarantine. There was no idea that a ship from a sick port could be held offshore until the sickness burned out among its crew. The Byzantines had 1,000 years of medicine and theology and law, and none of it could protect them from what came up the strait that October. But other cities were watching. Venice, the great rival, learned. Venice, in 1348, would begin to experiment with isolating ships before allowing them to land. They held the ships for 40 days, 40 giorni, and the word quarantine would be born from that practice. The first modern public health measure in Europe was an invention of the plague. It was invented by a city that watched Constantinople fall and decided it would not fall. The same way. That is the next story. You survived Constantinople, but the ships have already left. They are sailing west. The plague is moving, and in the next video, you will be standing on the docks of Florence as the ships arrive. You will be a young man named Pietro. You will watch your city die in 3 months. You will lose everyone, but you will also become a witness, and your testimony, your fragment in a book by a man named Boccaccio, will become a piece of one of the most important works of the modern world. Florence, 1348. The series continues. Subscribe.